Hello, everybody. Uh, this is a second time recording this video. I think in the whole time I've been doing Le YouTube, I've only ever had to record a video again once. So this would be the second time of a second time. And maybe some of them needed a second recording, but none of them have got it. I don't know what happened with this one. It went weird. I say this one, I mean the last one. Anyway, this week This week is going to be Mass Effect Andromeda Nexus Uprising. I wanted to read some sci-fi. What I noticed when I sort of looked at ye old channel and at the books that I have, not just these guys, not just those guys. How's this look? Not just those guys. I have other books past there. It's not like it's a huge cavern. Yes, it's a huge, massive cavern of books. But in the cavern of books, I don't have a lot of sci-fi. It just sort of somehow worked out. I have tons of history. So I wanted some sci-fi. But it's sort of trickier to find than you'd think. And that's why when I looked up on my Audible Plus, I have the Audible Plus account. This isn't an ad. I'll take Amazon's money, but it isn't an ad. I have the Audible Plus, and in it, they had these Mass Effect books. Now, I know the Mass Effect property from the video games. And even since I've played the video games, I've always thought it's the perfect property to make more science fiction with. More TV shows, more movies, the works. I really wish they would. As of yet, they haven't. Other than these books. So, I snagged it. I'm going to give it a go. But therein is some of the issue, right? Now, the book itself says it's a prequel story for the next game. The game being Mass Effect Andromeda. That doesn't concern us. What concerns us is the book itself. Now, normally I would rate it harsher because certain things are left out that are necessary for, I'd say, maximum enjoyment. But I can't blame these authors because the product they made isn't actually to be standalone. It's in the title that it's a prequel to this other thing, right? So I think they had pressures from studios, from their bosses, from whoever's paying the bills, so to speak, to not make it as long, to get the ball moving. And so what you lose is pre-knowledge. I had the pre-knowledge because of the game. Now, if you do not have this pre-knowledge, I really would. Oh my god. I really would go look it up. If you don't have to play the game, you could. Even when I played the game, I didn't. The parts I remember most aren't the actual gameplay, the shooting or whatever happened in that regard. They had an archive on your ship, on your spaceship, and you could really, literally just read histories of the various races that are in this universe. That's all you really need before you go into this book. Various things happen that require the back, and without the back, it changes the rating, right? So if you have the back knowledge, if you went and looked it up, even just read a Wikipedia on each of the races real quick, I think this is a 4 out of 5. I think it's very enjoyable. I always thought this universe could hold up to your sort of, what is it? like a Star Trek Monster of the Week kind of storytelling. I think if it were a TV show and it had 25 episodes, an hour each, that's a lot of content, and I think it'd be spectacular. So the book can hold up. But if you don't read it, the authors do not give you a lot of descriptions of the aliens or descriptions of weaponry or technology, this kind of thing. I don't think they were given the time to do this because everything else is good. And clearly they have the ability to, as writers. They clearly could have described these aliens. I just don't think they were actually given the time. So, know that know that going in, and you'll know what's what. And I mention this because I think it's a big element. It is a big element to know that these are aliens, that they're interacting in this kind of a way. Because what is it? Well, all science fiction can grab modern issues and just, mask it with an alien, right? This isn't Jews versus um, Nazis. This is blue alien versus red alien. It's completely different, even though this one clearly is dressed like a Nazi, right? It's always been the fun part of science fiction. You can go tackle these issues, get people to think about them in a different way, sort of a clean way, right? Because life, history comes with emotions, and it's hard to then see clearly what the problem is. So without a good sense of the alienness of them, you lose a little bit of this story. Okay, now for the story itself. The story is, and it starts you wake up. You wake a character up, Sloan, I think, security officer. Oh, hold on. Should I put this here? I'll go ahead and put it here before the sort of story. The universe itself, again, the pre-knowledge. We have, what do we say? We have Krogans. Very warlike, very tough. Kind of like your Klingons. So if you love Klingons, you'll automatically love Krogans. And if you love Krogans and you've never seen Star Trek, you'll love Klingons. And I love them both. I love them. I like Klingons. I like the dwarves. There's always this hardy, tough kind of a race. Honor bound, all this mess. I fall for it every time. We have Asari. There's these blue aliens. Last I checked, they're all like female. Again, this came out before I guess your big gender war started happening on ye old media. And they hit you with this idea of an all-female race. They reproduce, have like seahorses or whatever, however they reproduce. I don't know. And that gives you this ability to tell these gender stories without really having to upend the apple cart, so to speak. They get very fun for sci-fi. In case you're wondering, it isn't woke. So don't get offended. Asari, these blue aliens, they live a long time, I believe. So do Krogan. The Asari live a long time, very smart. Solarians, they have the shortest lifespan, highly intelligent, super wired, but then also they're very analytical, very logic-based, like a certain Spock. They don't get jokes, this kind of thing. And of course, you got humans all up in the business. Those are your races. And again, it comes into play for all the reasons you want it to. They end up, our Sloan wakes up ripped out of stasis, right? Like, there's a process to be woken up calmly. She wasn't woken up calmly, so they say it as like it's painful. She looks around, it's just a destruction, a hot mess. And then you start to understand they're on a large ship, the Nexus, and they've all decided to start a colony. They're going to take this large ship and go to Andromeda, which is on the other side of everything, everywhere. And as she wakes up, she doesn't know if she's 2 years into the trip and bumped into something, or 800 years and at her final destination, right? So they could be asleep anywhere from 2 to 800 years. I think we settle on the 800 years bit. Then the point being, you are alone. There's nothing anywhere out here. You were the first to come. You're supposed to set stuff up. You have your ship. You have whatever scans data came in from the future, from sending probes, but that's it. No one can come and help you because they're 800 years away. It's just you and your wits. Which this is what the story is. It ends up being a survival story, and not. I love that it's not pushed aside. I love that the story, the whole beginning to end, is the fight for survival. Because that is, you see some of these Navy shipwreck issue stories, and it is an entire sort of little book of coming together, issues that happen, overcoming, survival, this kind of thing. Our whole book is that. We don't jump to bigger problems. I love that it keeps focus. It also got me thinking about, ye olde stasis. I'm using ye olde a lot in this video. Sci-fi absolutely loves using stasis. And certain tropes, normally tropes annoy me. In general, I say be creative. I've never once watched a sci-fi anything, read a sci-fi anything, and been mad at them using stasis, and I've never been mad at them using warp drives, faster than light, FTL, whatever you want to call it, go fast. And now we're at this new planet. I'm like, you're going to let them use that trope again. I'm like, It's like, it's like Mexican food needs cheese on it, right? Like, every dish has cheese. I'm like, yeah, but I love nachos, and I love enchiladas, and give me more quesadillas. Absolutely love it. They're forced out of stasis. She's running around in just her uniform, right? She doesn't have her military gear. She doesn't have any tech. It's fire everywhere. The ship's completely, well, not completely, but it's pretty trashed. They spend a good chunk of the book looking for their fearless leader. Of course, one person talked everyone into this. Gian Garson. Gian Garson's dead. So that'd be like, let's all follow Alexander the Great, and now he's dead. What do we do now? That's the story we're getting. There's more, what do we say? Meat on the bone, I think, for character interactions and development, with that as your baseline. Very cool. The bureaucracy, right? The ship has a computer, and it was programmed, let's say, in the old world. We're now in the new world. But we tend to hang on to things as people. So it makes sense to me that you'd hang on to the structure you set up in your old world. The old world being, here's person A in charge, Gian Garson, everything will work. Well, what if he dies? Well, contingency's this person. What if they died? Contingency's that one. What if they died? Contingency's this guy. That's what happens in our story. We're looking down the list, all these people dead, we come to this guy. And the people awake don't know who the crap this guy is. They were assuming it was going to be one of them. I think one's head of security, right? So you're like, it makes sense for head of security, but it ended up being some kind of accountant, a Solarian accountant, which is kind of funny. One, I could understand you hanging on to the way things need to be in a survival situation. You want somewhere to put a footing on to make things seem rational. I can also understand it where these are just the rules. You need time to adjust to this is the new way, right? Like if aliens invaded tomorrow on Earth, there'd be chaos for a little while, but after a while, you just get used to green people at the grocery store. That's what people do. We just adjust. So your new director of colonial affairs is a Solarian. Solarian by the name of, oh my god, where'd I write his name? Tan. Not the greatest leader. He's doing his best. He has his own ideas. Which, again, second point. If you're in this situation, what do you focus on first? You have a large ship. There's 1,000 people or 2,000, however what the number is. I don't know. They just say it's a large number. Larger than can be fed. So we're keeping the bulk of people asleep while we wake up who we need to wake up to fix the ship, then find out what the crap broke the ship, and then move on from there. And so our tan guy, he's concerned with hydroponics. He's like, look, we got to fix hydroponics. And the other person's like, all right, I can lose workers off of life support to fix your plants, but then we'll all die. So you decide. But it made me think, like, what would you fix first? I think you have your options. Send shuttles out, right, and look around. But they could get caught in whatever the ship got caught in, and they're smaller. Sort of stay where you are. You could avoid more trouble, but more trouble could find you. Clearly, life support's got to be first. Hydroponics is going to take too long either way, right? I don't think you go for hydroponics first. Either way, it takes too long. It needs to be worked on. But that mess is going to take too long. There's no way food's going to grow fast enough. Well, I could say they have weird tech. They get food grown in a month. I love that we ask this question and then we'll ask a question and then sort of leave it on our characters and sort of watch how they try and figure it out. But another major point of this Solarian being in charge is his head engineer. His head engineer is a Krogan by the name of Kesh. And you're like, why is that? Why are you mentioning it like that? Again, the history, the pre-history. They mentioned this slightly, but I think you could have given it more time. Back in the day, way back for them because they're not 800 years in the future, so to speak. Back in the day, there's a council of global races, right? Asari, Turians. Did I mention Turians? That's what a Turian is. There are Turians, Asarians, and such on a council, right? They're running the galaxy. They know of Krogans, but Krogans at this time are just primitive. Because the planet's so brutal, they've made them brutal. And so all they do is spend their time fighting, killing, and making more Krogans, right? They're super tough, but they're primitives. It's like the Comanche, so to speak, right? Well, then something called the Rachni show up. And the Rachni, like these bug-type things, start wrecking shop on everything. The whole force together, they're losing the war. Like you fight every battle, you're taking some out, but more of them come. You're going to lose. And so someone has the idea, hey, let's use the Krogan. Let's see if they'll fight for us. So that's what they do. They talk to them. They arm them. They give them armor, weapons, ships, teach them how to use it. Say, go help us fight this. And Krogans are like, here's something to fight. I'll fight it. And they go to town. They wreck shop. They win the war. They're the reason this war is won. But then, afterwards, you have to deal with the consequences. Consequences being you've armed, let's say, the Colonial showed up and gave all the Comanches guns, right? You'd have a problem. How do you beat them? Because they are from such a harsh planet. Their birth rates are so high because they've been getting killed by large animals, by each other, by swamp, that now they're off that world, reproducing like crazy, teaching all their kids how to fight, and they're like, are you going to act right? And he's like, toughest man wins. And they started their own little war. Now you're weakened from the Rachni wars, and there's this new wave of Krogans now where there were Rachni. These might be worse than the other ones. Who's to say? In any case, they're losing that war too. And at some point, a Solarian scientist invents what he calls the genophage, which is an infection to the genetics of the Krogan that makes their birth rate like 1 in 50 or some ungodly number, right? So all of a sudden, instead of babies all around, you just got dead babies all over the place. A horror show. And now generations have gone by. That war ends. They're in their spot. But you can obviously you can assume there'd be sort of bad blood between these two races. That hadn't been sorted out in the old world. It's not been sorted out in the new. And so our Solarian's now nervous being around the Krogan, even though Krogan didn't do anything to him. But it's understandable. That nervousness affects decision making. You see? Love this element. We also have fun sci-fi. Cool sci-fi guns. I mean, again, I know because of pre-read how these sort of guns work. That you put a full metal block in the gun, and it like molecularly shears off some of the metal and just slings it at like a high rate of speed over and over. It's very cool. We also have biotics, implants that can move magnetic fields and this and that. And on our story, this is sort of set in passing, right? We don't get a lot of time to spend with it. But it's still a cool concept to have in a sci-fi book, which is why I always said this property would do so well. So they're just hanging on, but at some point they start having discussions as to, instead of just hang on, move the ball forward. And they decide, he's sort of thinking, we need to put everyone back to sleep until hydroponics gets growing. No one's about that. Because if you walked over bodies of people who never got to wake up, because they were stuck in stasis when the ship hit whatever it hit, the Scourge, you're not going to want to go back to sleep and just leave your life to fate. You'd rather, I can move on my legs, I can run around. I'd like to avoid the monster if I can. So, to buy time, he's like, well, let's send out some of our shuttlecraft and see if we can see a planet to land on. They go, they come back, they're like, the planets are as messed up by the Scourge as a ship is. We got nowhere to go unless we go way deep into Andromeda, and then there's no, your guess is as good as mine if we find something in time to save us all. They hide this from the rest of the crew because they think the crew will panic. But when the crew finds out you're lying, now they're like, well, they're lying to us, and they're going to force us to go back to stasis and sleep. And so some of them rebel, literally. They get guns. The engineering groups rebel. And then by this time, you've had enough time one-on-one with various characters. You know why, like, this one's leaving a bad situation. The Krogans are coming to a new universe to hopefully, work the genophage out of their system, sort of a fresh start. Everyone has this sort of reason for leaving everything behind and trying to start a new world. And you get to know these reasons. So when they start shooting at each other, it's not high action, so to speak. It's not like a battle scene. There are battles, but it's not this big explosion. It's not Michael Bay. But you feel it so much more because you know all of the characters. And I'm like, I'm not trying to have any of them shot. Some of them get shot. It's very sad. At 50-50, our Solarian's like, well, that's not going to work. I need a guaranteed victory. So what he does is he goes and wakes up the rest of the Krogan. Specifically one, the matriarch. What's the name? I didn't write the name down. So much for my notes. The matriarch of the Nakmor clan. Now, when you wake up the matriarch, they're all going to listen to her. Just the way they're structured. And no single group can beat the group of Krogans. So you wake them up, they help you fix the ship. You wake up the rest of them, and they're like, look, we got to go win this war. Some of them ran into the war without a weapon. They're so crazy. Some of them die. They quell the rebellion. And for it, they were promised a seat on the council by an underling. But our main Solarian is like, I'm not giving you a seat on the council. So they're all like, well, this is just the same old, same old. When they need us, and after, they kick us to the curb, right? Bad blood still. Issues still. He ends up quelling the rebellion, and then he thinks he puts them in a bind. He says, you can either go to sleep, which is what he wants, or I'll give you a few of these shuttlecraft, and you can just go out and see what you can find. But you won't be able to come back. Exile. He thought there's no way they'd choose exile because it seems certain death. But that's what they chose. So at the very end, you lose Sloane, a lot of these engineers, and then all the Krogan go as well. Because why am I going to stay here if I'm going to treat it like crap? Filtering out, and now you have a smaller party, a more damaged ship because they were shooting at each other and throwing grenades. And so we're in this sort of a pocket. And that's how the sort of story ends. It's absolutely... It is great sci-fi. The situation's rough, so it's not like a walk through the park. But it is great, great sci-fi. And there's 2 more in the series, and I'm definitely going to read those as well. I hope they do a good job. I also hope I don't need to go play the game, because I'd rather not play the game if I can help it. But I might if I have to. Again, if you don't want to play, just rent this game or something on easy. Just go through it on easy. You just want the story. You need to learn how to aim or anything like this. All right, that's the second run through. I don't think I messed anything up. Ad time. Here are my books. These will cost you money, but that money will go to me, and I'll buy stuff with it. So, that's the end of that. You want to help the channel, you don't have to subscribe to get more videos. If you want to help the channel, you buy a book. If you want to help the channel, but you also don't want to buy a book, then I guess just watch. That's fun too, right? All right. Thank you. I have to say thank you for listening in. These are really fun, by the way. Thank you, and I'll talk to you all next week.